Okay, so it says it's going live now. I'm just going to pull up real quick and see if it's popping up over on Facebook yet. And I'm going to let my dog out because he's standing at the door of the room whining. You can tell how highly professional these gatherings are.
We're good. My kids will focus at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah. I did a tea with friends with Julianne Donaldson on Tuesday, and that's what she was saying. At some point, I almost guarantee one of my kids is going to come in here.
Yeah.
So that's all right. We all get it.
Right now, but they're playing in the next room, so I'm like, we're gonna hear some crying or someone's gonna bang their head.
Well, and my kids are teenagers, so for the most part, they're pretty quiet.
Not so much
they're not doing schoolwork; they're chatting with friends online. So,
well, that's good.
Leave me alone.
Quieter over there. At least my kids will go outside and play, and that's nice.
Yeah, you're like, thank you. They're probably just as glad to get out as you are to have them get out.
We all love each other, but we're all very sick of each other at the same time. We all need our
right.
Own. That's good.
Oh, okay. Let's see. All right, I am showing that we are going live on Facebook, so that's good. We have a few greetings. One from Facebook, Mara saying hi from New Orleans, and over on YouTube, Jerry is saying hi as well. So it sounds like we are working. And Natalie says she just finished your book, Secrets and Suitors, and it was a nice read. It is a really great book. So
thank you very much. That's so sweet. That always makes my day. I just feel happy.
Right? Right? We so often hear from people who don't like what we do that it's really nice to hear from someone who does.
Like a bad review, you have to have like 200 good reviews to like convince you that maybe you're not terrible.
Exactly. And that's what evens it out. Like it doesn't outweigh it. It just makes you feel like, okay.
Exactly. It's all a horribly terrible balance there.
It is. It is.
You could go the other way. Fun. It's great being an author.
Oh, I know. I have this saying, and everyone who's known me for very long now quotes me about this because I say it a lot, but there are easier ways to make very little money. You wonder why we do it.
It's so true, though. I don't know. I just think there's a great misconception out there that we make millions of dollars and that we're happy all the
time. Exactly. And what little money we make has to go to the therapy that's inevitable.
Exactly. Or the chocolate we have to eat to fuel the writing. It's very even.
Exactly. When I first decided to pursue writing as a career, I set a goal for myself that I wanted to earn enough money to pay for the paper I used as a writer. And it took a while, but when I hit that point, I was like, I've hit the big time.
Anything I make from here is just a bonus.
Exactly.
I wanted to pay for like conferences, and I wanted to pay for being able to do all my writing stuff.
Exactly.
Being a strain on my family's resources, and so being able to do that has been really great.
Exactly. You get to where, hey, I could go to McDonald's on my paycheck, to I can pay for my paper, to I am no longer considered a deprecating part of my family's income.
Exactly. It is nice to add to the income for sure. It's always good.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Okay, Marilee is saying she's glad to know that her kids aren't the only ones going crazy.
I'm pretty sure 90% of the U.S. is just about to explode at this point already, and we've got a month.
Exactly. And I suspect next year, when school starts back up again and teachers send out their list of stuff they need, pencils and papers, will be like, take everything you want. I had no idea what you did.
They'll look like the toilet paper shelves right now. We will just be buying everything for them.
Exactly. Because we're like, you are my hero.
Yes. And I've got 2 boys, and I've only got one in kindergarten. So I feel like our situation hasn't changed that much because he would only go 3 hours a day. But for him, it's been really hard because I'm an introvert. Being home, it's not too terrible on my mental state. But for my poor girl who is super outgoing, and it's fun.
And being in kindergarten is such a huge thing when you're that age, because you've been waiting for it and excited about it. And to have that just snatched away so quickly. And they're so little, so it's hard to understand why. So.
I've tried to explain what's happening. And so there's a sickness out there, Mom. There's lots of germs. And I'm like, yeah, we don't go outside where all the germs are. So they get the
Oh my gosh. Well, my youngest is very, very extroverted. So this has been very hard on her. And I came across this meme on Facebook that I read to her. And it said, "Introverts, check on your extroverted friends. We're not okay." She just was like, oh my gosh, it's so true.
I know. And I'm like, I mean, I miss going places, but it's not a total horrible thing for me. But yeah, people that, thrive on being around people and going places out, this will be way hard. So
yeah, it is.
Really check on your extroverted friends for sure.
Exactly. All right. Well, we have a question here from Rachel on Facebook. Right. She wants to know from you, Joanna, since she hasn't started your books yet, which one would you recommend someone start with?
I would actually probably say my first one. It's The Truth About Miss Ashbourne. And it's a fun Regency about a governess who's left an inheritance by her grandfather. And she has to go spend a month at her family's estate in order to earn the inheritance. And she's never met her family. So it's a super awkward situation. And of course, she's all in love with the handsome.
But it's a romance, of course.
Hijinks ensue. It's fun. And I was thinking that one because my next book coming out this fall is a sequel to that one. So if you like it, then there's a sequel coming out, basically. But that's probably my favorite one still that I've written.
Awesome. There's a special place, I think, in every author's heart for the first book they write and the first book they publish, which may or may not be the same book. Mm-hmm. But because it is a first, it's that accomplishment. It's that, that baby.
Absolutely. So, I think for me, especially, I've talked about this with my author friends before, but that first book, I feel like there's no pressure. You're not thinking about anything but the pure joy of the writing process. You are just exploring your characters and you're just having fun. And then I feel like once you get that first book published, something in your brain shifts where you're writing for you're writing for your reviewers, and you kind of have to fight that a lot. So that first book, just the memory of writing it was just like joy. I just loved it so much.
And once you're published, it's never that way again. Mm-hmm. Like you said, you try to make sure you are still writing a book because you love the book and you love the characters, but you can't ignore the reality that you have to write something that's going to sell, and you have to write something that meets expectations. And so it's never completely out of your mind. And so I think that's one reason why we love those first books, whatever we wrote before we were published, because it's just a different feel to it. Okay. Marilee is asking, Joanna, does your book coming out in the fall have an official title yet? And you may or may not be able to say. I know there's timing on everything.
It's kind of hard to know which details to share. It's called Otherwise Engaged. So I kind of the title is my favorite one I've come up with, and I'm really happy. Yay. I get to keep it. And I actually have been working with my designer on the cover, so hopefully I get to
love it.
It will be fun, but
awesome.
This is what I'm really excited about, because I did get like a sequel to my first, so I get to revisit those characters, and I feel like
it's always fun.
Capture that joy again, a little bit of it, because returning to those characters. I mean, you do it a lot, Sarah. You enjoy a lot with all your fun characters, and so I got to see a little glimpse of that going back to my world. It was really fun.
I'm like, I could build a new world, or I could just go back to the one I already made.
Going back, Sarah. Everybody
okay. We had a question that swung past. Shaylin wants to know, have both your husbands been super supportive during your writing career, or has there been some contention because writing interferes with other mom stuff? And you can answer that to whatever degree you're comfortable.
First, I feel like I'm talking a lot. So,
well, because I've invited you in. Okay. So I'm making you talk.
My husband is awesome. I have no complaints. He's also listening, so I have to say that. Just kidding.
The truth comes out.
It's really been awesome. Like, I feel like when I was writing my first book, and I didn't know if I was gonna be published. I didn't know if this writing thing was gonna pan out. I didn't know if I was gonna make money from it. It was, I want to say it was hard for him to support me, but I just think once things got serious, he was like, "Oh, this is a real thing that we can get behind and push." And he's been supportive in so many ways. Like, he reads all my books, which is kind of amazing because he reads about one book a year. And now that is my book that I write a year.
But again, no pressure.
Yeah, so he reads all my books, and he doesn't like romance, but he always reads them and tells me he loves them, which is really important to me. And he's also great for the business side of things. He's got a mind for finances, and so when I get my paychecks, I'm like, because he's so good at money and
use this appropriately.
Yeah. So I feel like we're a good partnership, and he also a lot of the time he'll take, if I'm need to get writing done, if I'm meeting a deadline, he'll take the boys and get out of our hair for a day or two, like, and just let me do my thing. Awesome.
Yeah, my husband's been very much the same. When I first decided I wanted to do it, well, my very first book I wrote was on a dare, so I was doing it to prove something to my mother.
So he's like, yeah, do it.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to write this book, but you know, and he knows me. My degree is in data analysis and statistical research, and so like I'm a very left-brained kind of person. So he knew when I said I need to go learn how to write a book, he knew that would mean classes and reading books and taking notes and all that. And so it's going to take some time. And at the time, he was still in school, and we had 2 little kids, so things were a little bit crazy. But he was like, okay, sounds good. How do we make this work? And one night a week and one Saturday a month was my day that I would be writing and working on that. And he would make sure he had his schoolwork caught up and everything, so he could, you know, we could make that exchange. And by the end of writing that, I was like, this is what I want to do. I think I want to do this like full time. And, and so I mentioned it to him because I knew it'd be an impact. And he was like, sounds good. Let's do it, you know? That's and so years down the road, ever since even before we were married, he had talked about wanting to be in the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square. It was a dream of his. And so after we moved up to Utah and it was finally within the realm of possibility, and he decided he was going to go audition, he did it was like role reversal. He sat down and said, I want to do this, but I know it's going to be an impact. And I thought there was not even a hesitation. I was like, we've had this conversation before, but in reverse. Of course, I'm going to say, let's make this happen. And it's been that way. I go to his concerts. He reads my books. We've, have been supportive. So, and I know not every writer has that. So I'm grateful that I do, because boy, would it be hard.
I know. I've definitely heard and read and had some author friends that I've had problems. And I think it's sometimes you just need to, like, spouse will come around. I hope. I mean,
you hope so, right?
For you to, I mean, I think, like I said, it is harder when it's more of a hobby than a business sometimes.
Right.
But sometimes that's when the support is needed the most, I think. So
exactly.
I would just hope that you authors could get
maybe it's hard to conceive of, but at least you can step back and say, well, this is something that brings them joy. So
exactly. The joy thing is so important. And there's also author friends. I have the best author friends and writer friends, and they have made this journey just so amazing. And so that's I feel like that's the biggest blessing that I've gotten from writing.
Right? Is the people that you get to know. And because we all do get it, it's somebody you can turn to and say, this thing is going on and it's frustrating. And we all go, yeah, like there's no need to explain.
I love it so much. It's my favorite thing about writing.
Okay, Rachel has asked, so Sarah, with your family series, so like my John Quills and my Lancasters, and I agree, she's like, I'm not sure what to call them in terms of series, because they do stand alone and yet they're interconnected. Yeah.
What do you call them? You just John Quills and...
I call them like the John Quill Brothers books or the Lancaster books, or because they're interconnected stories.
Yeah.
Not a true series. They're interconnected stories. She asked, do you have a general idea for each character's stories, or do you kind of develop them along the way? I know from the first book of every series what that whole series is going to look like. I may not have every single tiny detail, but I know who they're going to end up with, how they will meet that person, what their conflicts are going to be. So they all get planned out very, very, very early on. But I'm a planner. Not every author is. So and I'm a planner on the extreme end of it.
That blows my mind, because writing these, I have 2 books that are connected, and that has been hard. So I can't imagine you've got, I don't even know how many books here. I've lost track. You probably lost track. But you have so
crazy
books and characters and dates and character descriptions and names, and like I just thinking
it's like, whoa. But yeah, they're all known. And my Lancasters and Jonquils, as everyone knows, overlapped in Loving Lieutenant Lancaster. And I've known from the beginning of both of those series that would happen in that book. So setting all of that up too happened early on. But again, I'm kind of unusual in that sense. I don't think most authors actually do that. So
unless you're planning a bit, I feel like most series are not that long though.
Right. If it's a trilogy, it's easy to just be like, well, at the end, this will kind of go on. But
most series that are as long as yours are like different genres, even I feel like they're fantasy or something like that. And so I don't know. I just think it's amazing, Sarah, what you do.
It's a little bit crazy is what it is.
You all got a little
Okay,
special.
I saw some things fly by. I'm going to scroll back up. Do you, I'm assuming she means both of us, have a favorite Jane Austen novel? And if you have seen any of the film adaptations, do you have a favorite? That's a really good question.
That is a good question.
Do you have a favorite?
I feel like mine just switches back and forth between Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion. In college, I loved Persuasion because I had a few classes that actually focused on that one a lot more than Pride and Prejudice, and it gave me appreciation for the characters and where Jane Austen was coming from when she wrote it. And so, but Pride and Prejudice, I just love it. I just love Mr. Darcy.
So classic, yeah.
You can't not like it. Film adaptations. I'm not going to choose a favorite between the BBC and the Keira Knightley one because I really like both of them for different reasons. I think a lot of people have that.
They're very different approaches.
Very different. I feel like the BBC one I watch when I'm sick. That's like my go-to. I'm like 5 hours of Jane Austen. I'm coming. You know,
your comfort food. Yeah.
And that my husband will sit through, and so we'll watch that one together when we're in the fix. But I also love the BBC Emma miniseries. That one's probably my favorite miniseries besides the Pride and Prejudice one.
Love it. Yeah, Persuasion is probably my favorite, but my runner-up is Mansfield Park.
Oh, really?
I read it, I don't know, ages and ages ago. I think one of the reasons that one appeals to me is so much of the intrigue and conflict comes from an understanding of the era. Like if you don't recognize the social expectations and rules and implications of all that, it's easy to view Fanny as this super passive, super boring, weak, kind of heroine, when in reality, once you understand everything that's actually going on, you recognize she is more hardcore than any of the rest of Austen's heroines. She survives things that could have crushed just about anybody. But
I haven't read that one since high school, so I feel like now that I know more about Regency, I want to go back and reread that one.
Go back and read it because you'll understand more about poor relations. You'll understand more about the hopelessness of that, and yet the fact that she remains hopeful. You'll recognize the impropriety of the vicar's niece and nephew who are there, which you don't really get if you don't know the period. You think, oh, those guys are fun. Why does Fanny have such an issue with them? Like you'll understand where her strength is actually coming from, and her willingness to refuse a proposal when she's a poor relation. That takes a degree of guts that I think most people don't realize. So I love Mansfield Park for that reason. But if you don't know the era, it's easy to be like, eh.
What's wrong with her? Yeah, no, exactly. I really want to read it now again because I feel like I would have a way different viewpoint of it after doing a lot of research.
I think you will. But I think it's also why it's not as beloved as the others.
Yeah.
Because you do have to have that background. And
I think so too.
Yeah. Okay, Shaylin is saying, sometimes after reading a book, I have dreams about them. Have either of you ever dreamed about your characters after writing your books, or maybe during, or maybe before?
I really don't know if I have. I mean, I think I dream about writing, and I always think about writing before I fall asleep. I feel like that's when I get my really good ideas. I have lines of dialogue running through my head. I don't know if I remember any specific dreams, but you've written a lot more than me, Sarah, and you've been doing it a lot longer. Have you had a lot of dreams?
I haven't really. Like, we all have heard that story of how Twilight began as a dream.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I ever tried to write a book based on my dreams, no one would read it. They'd be like, what was this woman on? Because they're so out there and absurd.
Yep. That would be me too. I don't dream about my books because it would make them really wacky. It's a smart thing.
Exactly. Oh, Celeste is saying she loves Mansfield Park. All right, Celeste. I meet very few people who share my love of Mansfield Park.
I think like the more popular ones kind of trumps out the ones because they want to be like, I like it. I like this one. I also really love Northanger Abbey. Have you seen the movie?
Me too. I love that one. And that one's especially fun once you know that it's a parody of Gothic novels of the time. And once you know that, it's so brilliantly hilarious.
It's so funny.
Love it.
And I just love Tilney. I think he's an underrated Austen hero for sure. He's just adorable and teasing and understands muslin. So what else do you need?
Yeah. I love it. Lisa is saying my dreams are the best. I regularly share my dreams on my personal Facebook page. And they're really weird. I dreamed one I had the other day was that my nephew had come to live with us, but he had been turned into a soccer ball. And the only way to turn him back into a person was to successfully teach him, as a soccer ball, differential calculus.
I mean, makes perfect sense.
Those are the dreams I have.
Schooling coming out. You're like, I got to teach the soccer ball. It's like teaching my kids. I don't know.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. Marilee is saying, when you're writing a connecting book, do you always remember details from earlier books, or do you have to go look things up and reread? Since you recently did, for the most part.
Sorry for a second. So
That's all right.
I was like, oh, I'm doing this alone. Come back. Okay, we're good.
Don't leave me. All right. Did you hear the question, or do you need me to repeat it?
So I think I remembered it for the most part because the character that I chose for my new book is a fairly minor one, and so I feel like I didn't give a lot about her. It's almost easier. I could give her own story, own backstory without competing with the first book. But I did have to make sure I got dates right and how old was she when it happened and things like that. And so I didn't go back and reread my whole first book, but I went back and read the chunks about her and the things that would have affected my character.
Right. Just to make sure you're remembering it right. Yeah.
I don't think I could do that if I had 20 other books there. I don't know how you. That's how you have right? You have
copious notes. Seriously, I take so many, and every once in a while, because I do take a lot of notes, but every once in a while I'll come across a detail that I either didn't write down or sometimes have written down in more than one place, and they conflict with each other. So I've been known to toss out on social media, does anyone remember the name of this character's horse? Or did I ever tell you how old this character was?
It's like those small details you just kind of throw out sometimes and don't think it's important.
Exactly. And I know I cannot go back and reread all 15 books that could possibly contain that information.
You have lots of fans that have reread them, and they know it. They know all things. I love it.
Oh my goodness. All right, Alicia on Facebook is saying that all 6 of her books were from her dreams. Man, I wish my dreams were book-writable.
Wouldn't that be great?
Would be amazing. I mean, you still have to do a lot of work, but
yeah, I'm all for it. I'd love to get my ideas through dreams.
Right? Oh my goodness. Okay, Alicia again saying, Sarah, are all your books with Shadow Mountain or another publisher, or are you self-published? Which do you prefer? My books are with 3 different publishers at this point, and I have done some self-publishing as well. I think which you choose in terms of traditional versus indie, big publisher versus small publisher, which publisher, all depends on what you need as an author and the projects that you're working with. Some authors really excel at self-publishing or indie publishing, and for others, it just doesn't jive with their strengths and their struggles. And traditional publishing is the same. I mean, because there are pluses and minuses to both. But no, I have books with Shadow Mountain. I have books with Covenant. I have books with Mirror Press. And where those go just depend on the project itself. So I wouldn't say I have a preference. It really just comes down to what each project needs and what I need at the time as an author. So there you go. Sounds like a non-committal answer, but it's the truth. It depends.
Yeah,
it is the answer there. Oh, okay. Hannah on YouTube is saying, this is a question for both of us. If you could marry one of your fictional characters, which one would it be?
Okay, and my husband.
Now, bear in mind, Joanna's husband's listening.
I have to be very careful in this answer. I got to think about it a little bit. I think I'd probably go with my hero from my first book, William Rowley, because he's just fun and teasing and kind and thoughtful and all the qualities my husband has, because he's listening.
There you go.
I do feel like a lot of authors do this as well, but we put a little bit of our significant other into all our heroes, because that's the example that we have of,
right.
true love. That sounded really
cute. There tends to be a little bit of us in our heroines, and so it kind of makes sense. I think for me, it would have to be a combination of Joseph Archer from my Hope Springs books and Leighton Jonquil. But that's because those 2 characters are the most like my husband. Like, legitimately, I think any of my other characters would either drive me crazy or I would drive them crazy. So gotta pick someone I'm pretty sure can put up with me.
I love it.
Oh my gosh.
I love both of them.
All right, Marlene is asking.
On your husband.
Marlene's asking, is it more difficult to begin writing or to stop writing when you're on a roll?
For me, it's to begin writing.
Oh my
I don't know.
gosh.
Sometimes
I'd
I have
say,
to trick myself
go ahead.
and I have to say, okay, you're gonna write for 20 minutes. You just have to sit down and do it. And then I usually end up writing for longer if I'm
Right.
feeling it. But it is frustrating when I'm on a roll and my family needs something or something happens. I don't know. I guess both, but probably starting writing is probably
Right.
harder.
I think I'm with you. It's more difficult to get started, but more frustrating to have to stop
Yeah.
when it's flowing. So it's kind of a different struggle on the two ends there.
Writing is
Okay.
just a struggle sometimes.
Not true.
Sometimes.
There's a quote. I wish I knew which author had said it. It said, "Writers are people for whom writing is harder than it is for most people." Something to that effect. I was like, oh, that's really true.
Writing is hard. It's hard work and it's a
It's
lot of
harder than you think. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Rachel wants to know from the two of us which of our books was our favorite to write and our favorite in general in regards of characters and storylines. And they could be the same book, obviously, but do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I think I'd say my first one again. Just I feel like it was just really fresh and fun to write, and it always
Right.
good memories. And I love those characters. They've just been, um, I don't know. Whenever I think about my favorite characters, they always pop into my mind first. So
Right. So you're like, I guess that's my favorite. I always tell people I'd rather you ask me which was my favorite child because that might be easier to answer.
right for you. You've got a lot of children to choose from here. Let's see.
Oh my gosh, so many. If you include all my anthologies, I'm at like 55, and it's really hard to say which one. And I enjoy them all for different reasons, you know? And I think the further I get into interconnected worlds, the more invested I am and the more I come to love the characters. And it makes it both more likely that it's my favorite and harder to decide which is my favorite. So no, I love them. I think a good, honest answer is my favorite is whatever book I'm currently drafting because I still love it and still believe it's good. My least favorite is whichever one I just finished editing because I hate it now and I'm convinced that it's terrible.
I just finished edits for my one coming out in the fall, and I'm like, this book is terrible. I hate it.
Exactly. Is it too late to cancel?
Are you sure people want to read this?
I have to promote this. I don't like to lie.
I mean, you always love it, but when you are stuck in it, and editing is you go down to the details and like you tear apart sentences and you rework character motivations and you feel like you have torn it apart so much that you're making it worse instead of making it better. And
exactly. And because in editing, the point is to find what's wrong with the book, that's all you're focused on through the editing process. And so your brain gets so fixated on what's wrong that it's easy to assume there's nothing right.
Yeah.
You keep finding things.
It's so true. But when you're drafting, you're just like, I'm a genius. This is so great. I'm the best writer ever, going off thinking you're edit. You're like, I was wrong. I was so wrong.
Who was I fooling? And I still, to a degree, feel that way when a book comes out. Even though you've had a little bit of time away from it, there is in the back of my mind the unshakable belief that this is the book that's going to end it all because it's going to be terrible.
I don't know what I'm doing, and this is going to be the one that
they're going to figure me out. Exactly. It never stops.
Oh, good. That's encouraging.
You're welcome. I think you develop better coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I'll have
Karen A. Oh, go ahead.
I said I'll have my fourth one coming out, and that's still nothing compared to you. But I feel like even in that time span, I've gotten a lot better at tuning out the negativity when books come out
and figuring out how to ride that wave. Yeah. Okay, Karen Adair wants to know, how do you know when a project is done?
Because I'm sick of it. Probably that's probably
actually probably pretty true. There's the saying that a book is never actually finished; it's just abandoned, and I think that's pretty true. I tend to know when I've hit the deadline.
On my
when I realize I can't do anything more on my own, that's when I know it needs to move to the next stage. And sometimes it's because you hate it so much you don't want to make it better.
And you need other eyes on it to tell you its problems and how to fix it. And
exactly.
I depend on beta readers and editors to to make me feel better about to make me see all the problems. Like, that's hard too, is when other people are pointing out the problems, because you're glad because you can fix them, but you're kind of like, can you just tell me it's perfect and move on?
Yeah.
Obviously it's but
Well, and the funny thing is I have a beta reader who that is their entire job. They're just supposed to come back and tell me what they liked. Like literally, don't tell me anything else. And I know that. I know they are intentionally not giving me critical feedback, but it's because I need one person I can send it to who I know will say, this was amazing. I loved it. Here are all the things I loved about it.
that's my sister for me. She reads everything
Yep.
pretty much from everyone else and tells me it's great, because I need
Exactly. Because you do. You need someone who, and it's not that they're lying, they're just only telling you what they liked, because you need that, especially when you're in that editing phase, when you're pretty sure everything you write is terrible. You need a reminder that there's something redeeming.
Exactly. There's plenty of other things coming from other people that are telling you how to fix it, which is good.
Exactly.
We also need the positivity, which is important.
Exactly. Okay, Shani has asked on YouTube, when designing your book and cover, do you contract that out? Do you have the designs already that you want? What is that process like? Now, I will tell you, because Joanna and I are both traditionally published, that process is going to look very different from someone who's indie published. So, because you had mentioned earlier, you're working with a cover designer. When you work with one at a traditional publishing house, it's a little different than if you were just to hire a designer. So since you're kind of doing that right now, what is that like with your publisher, Joanna?
So I'm with Covenant, and the way they do it, I actually really love it, is they work up about 4 or 5 different concepts and designs. Like usually they're totally different images, different styles and fonts and things like that. And they'll send them to me and I'll pick my top 3. And that's always super fun. I always get really excited when they send me designs. And so I'll pick my top 3 and then suggest any changes that I think maybe they can make it better for the book and things like that. And then they'll send it to my publisher, and the committee there will choose which they think will be best for marketing and what's best for the book, things like that. So I actually also have one indie title that I've done. It's just a little novella. And for that one, I'll get into it a little bit because it was so fun.
Yeah, no, please do, because it's a very different process.
Yes, and it's very different but very fun at the same time. So what we did is, my group of friends, we put together a series. This is my critique group. We put together a series of Regency fairy tale retellings. And my good friend Arlen Hawk, she has a vast collection of Regency dresses that she's sewn. And so we actually got to put together our own photo shoot, which is really fun. We had models,
fantastic,
friends and family that came and helped us out, and a photographer. And so we got to get their hair done and get all their dressed up, and we got to use the poses and the dresses and things like that for what we wanted for our covers. And then my designer for my indie books is really awesome. And she will find the background. She's really good at finding background images and putting it together so it looks so beautiful. And it's fun to be able to make the tweaks that I want to make and choose what I want. Because even though I get to pick my top 3 for my traditionally published books, I think there's only been one time where they didn't pick my top favorite book that I really wanted. But it is nice to have that control sometimes and be able to choose exactly what I want.
Right. Well, and Covenant didn't used to do their covers that way. When I first started with them, you got an email that said, this is your cover. And that was it. And you kind of went, okay.
You able to make and stuff, make suggestions?
Nope.
It would be so hard for me.
It was what it was. And sometimes, and the back cover copy, the first few books of mine, I didn't even see until the book was out. And there was one of them that has an error on the back. And I'm like, hey, if you'd run that past me, I could have fixed that. So I'm thankful that has changed. It was something those of us who've been with the company for quite a while had asked for a long time. So I was really glad that has changed. I love the process they do now. It's so much better.
I know it's been awesome. I don't have any complaints about the cover process. They're really good to work with in that way.
Yeah, I love it. And because, when they send us their 5 or 6 mock-ups and we can pick our top 3, we also can give them feedback on those and what we liked about different ones. And it's our chance to say, I loved this, or I love this image, but I love the font on the other one. And usually it doesn't change, but I had one where they said, well, what if we put that font on this image? And so sometimes it even changes at that point. So that's great when the author gets to have some input, but that's not always the case. So. Okay, Lauren, this is a great question from Lauren Jones. If you had to be quarantined with 2 of your characters, who would you pick and why?
Do I have to
That's a good question.
That's a good question. Ooh. I feel like I really have to think about it because I'm like, do I want someone fun and exciting to make it interesting, or someone quiet that will read books with me?
Someone will leave me alone.
I'll go with my governess character so she can take care of my kids. I don't know. Do I have a character like a chef? Someone can cook for me.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh, that's funny. Well, no, I have the same debate. I think, it depends on how long the quarantine's going to be.
that's true.
Because if it's going to be a long time, I'm going with someone from my Hope Springs series because those people know how to survive. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to make sure we don't run out of stuff. If it's going to be fairly short, I want to hang out with someone like Philip Jonquil or Marion Jonquil because they would be fun to hang out with. But after a while, we would all starve because they don't know how to do it.
And one that will help you survive.
There you go. We preferably won't kill each other. Oh, that's a great question, Lauren. I'll toss that out to people in the comments. If you had to be quarantined with 2 characters from books, who would you pick? Think about that. That's a fun question. All right. Ashley says she put Beauty and the Baron on hold at the library and it became available for her to pick up the day that the library is closed.
No.
Oh, no. That's like every reader's nightmare in this quarantine is not being able to get books, right? Oh, have you read anything lately that you'd recommend people look for, maybe in electronic format to read while they're
So I was actually in the middle of A Gentleman in Moscow, which is really good and charming and beautifully written. I actually had to stop reading it because he is on house arrest and it was hitting a little too close to him.
You're like, no, this isn't escapism anymore. I'm just looking in the mirror.
So I took a break from that one and I just finished My Lady Jane. Have you read that one?
I have not. It looks really good though.
So it's about Lady Jane Grey, who was queen of England for 9 days and then beheaded. In this one, it's a happier ending, so don't worry about that.
Alternate history.
Exactly. So it's basically the authors have said, this is not real history. This is our fun take.
We're just having fun. And I've heard it's really funny, which I love books that are funny.
Oh my
gosh.
And
I need to put that on my list.
As well. There's some magic and it was a really fun read. So if you're looking for an escape book,
it was
really, really good.
I love it. Well, I know that Covenant, we both have some books through Covenant, just released, I think 3 books yesterday.
Yes.
So I can remember them all. His Lady in Waiting. Oh my gosh. Jen Geigel Johnson.
Yeah. His Lady in Hiding.
Yes. The Noble Smuggler, Sean Bessie.
Love. Deadly.
Oh my gosh.
Design. Is that what it is?
Yes. Yes. So those are 3, because I've read other books by those authors, so they're going to be great books. So those are good ones to check out.
I have my good friend Megan Walker has her first book coming out with Shadow Mountain next week.
Right. I think it is next week.
Lakeshore Park, which is
Lakeshore Park. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got an early copy of it. Fantastic. So that's another great one. And they're all available in ebook. They probably are, at least most of them, available in audiobook. So those are some great options since we can't get to stores right now.
Try and support the authors that have books coming out right now because it's really hard. People aren't in store buying these books, which is where traditional authors get their, get their sales, and so it's
exactly. And everyone in the book industry knows the industry is going to take a hit. We don't know what that's going to look like yet, so there's a lot of nervousness amongst authors at the moment.
So if we can do our part and support these authors that are releasing right now, let's do it.
Exactly.
Everyone text and go buy books.
Yes, please. Mara says Adam, I'm sure Duke of Kildare, who she means, would not do well in quarantine. No, he wouldn't. He prefers to be at home, but being told he has to be, he would be the grumpiest man. So if I had to be in quarantine with Adam, Persephone would have to be there. Because if she wasn't, no one would live through it. It would be an absolute bloodbath.
It's not Adam and Philip, because that would not be
together.
Well,
like, you need to be quarantined from each other.
Half the house, you're on this half. You can take every hour, but on the other side.
Right. Do not overlap. Oh my goodness. Oh, Corby says she picked up the new Megan Walker book from Deseret Book today. So it sounds like there may be a few early copies showing up.
Perfect.
It really is great. So I would recommend that one for sure.
A perfect escape book. I think it's just fun and romantic and charming. So.
Okay, Stephanie is saying, will you post a list of all the good books coming out? Well, maybe not all of them because there are a bunch we probably don't know about. But yeah, when this live broadcast is over, I will hop onto my Instagram and my Facebook and just list any of them we've mentioned here in this.
If anyone wants to follow me, I said I just posted the 3 from Covenant yesterday on my Facebook page. So if anyone wants to go look at my feed, it should be on there a couple posts back. Those 3.
There. Awesome.
I'll post about Megan's when it comes out. So come follow me.
Fantastic.
That will be
well, you really should. I agree.
And a lot of my author friends are putting books up for free because I love my indie author friends, and I think they're so wonderful for doing all these free books because it gives people.
Right.
I mean, I think a lot of people are struggling financially right now. I mean, it's going to be hard.
Exactly.
And the authors are providing this, escape for people. And
exactly.
So I do post a lot of free books in my stories on Instagram or on Facebook. So
fantastic.
I try to spread the word.
Exactly. The Timeless anthologies. I actually sit on the board of the Timeless Romance Anthology company. And so that's what we've been doing, is trying to put up an anthology for free, as often as we are able to, because it's something that we can do. Most of us are traditionally published, and so we don't have control over the rest of our books in that sense, but we can do that with the anthologies to an extent. So we've been trying to do that, and because we get it, people are struggling emotionally, people are struggling financially, and I think a lot of us feel like we wish we could do more than we can. So we're trying to do what we're able, and
I love that.
Yeah, it's been great to see people reach out. Sylvia is asking, do y'all choose real life houses in England for your characters to live in? I would really like to know what houses Philip and Adam live in. I will take inspiration from real houses and real places in England or Ireland or, wherever something takes place. They aren't them exactly, but they have been sort of inspired by them. I've posted in my Wednesday cutting room floor posts which houses have inspired various houses in my stories. The house that inspired the vicarage in Holy Harry's book, the castle that inspired Fallstone Castle. I don't know if I've ever mentioned which one was the inspiration for Lambton Park, but they are posted back there somewhere. Like I said, I don't know if I've done Lambton Park yet. Maybe I'll do that next week.
Awesome.
My mom has joked that I should do a Lancaster and Jonquil tour of England.
That's no
and
joke.
Just lead a group to all the places that have inspired things throughout England.
Tickets will be so cheap. We're all gonna go.
Exactly. Why not, guys? Let's do this.
I just want to go everywhere now. I'm sick of my house.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, we have got a couple minutes left. I usually run these about 45 minutes. I found that's about the right sweet spot. So I'm going to ask one more question of you. We know you have a book coming out soon, and it's connected to your first. Toss out for those who weren't here at the top of the broadcast, the title, when it's coming out, and maybe just a quick kind of idea of what it's about.
Okay, so it's called Otherwise Engaged, and it comes out in October, and it's the sequel to The Truth About Miss Ashbourne, and it features the sister of my hero in that book, and her name is Rebecca Rowley. And so she is secretly engaged, and she thinks she has found the one and that she's in love. But of course, all her expectations for the future are thrown in the air when she meets her new neighbor, who happens to be a handsome Navy lieutenant. And she rescues his little sister from, I don't want to spoil things. I don't know. She rescues his little sister, and they meet, and at first they don't get along, but they start to get to know each other. And
now all of a sudden there are question marks. Love it. Love it. That is October. I have a book coming out in September. So if all of this is lifted by then, and since we're both relatively local to the same area, maybe we can figure out to do something together. That'd be really fun.
That's your Forget-Me-Not, right?
Yes, exactly. Georgian era. We're jumping back to 1700s. I'm real excited.
I love it, with the hair powdering.
Exactly, and the wide panniers and the face patches.
They're not costumes. They're not costumes. They're clothes back then. They're costumes now. I think they're so fun in the Georgian.
Right.
I think
this is the 1780s, so it's not quite as extreme, which is the point in that fashion that I like, because it's unique without being weird.
It's shifting into the Regency, so it's not quite as.
We're starting to make that transition. Exactly.
Fun. I can't wait.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today, Joanna. Like I said, I will post books we talked about. Joanna regularly posts about books that are coming out or on sale on her social media, so you can hop over for that and stay for Joanna because she's great. So thanks for being here, Joanna. Thanks everyone who commented in the comment section, and have a great one.
Thanks. Nice to talk to you all.
All right. Bye.